Test, test. Audio test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the February 1st, 2021 meeting of the Citizens Oversight Committee to order. And Shonda, would you call the roll, please?
I sure will. Eric Berg.
Present.
Jack Cunningham.
Here.
Eric David.
Aye, aye.
Sharon Dix Jackson. I know I saw her.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
here.
Yes, okay. Cesar Fierro.
Here.
Joan Greenwood.
Here.
Aaron Moore.
Here.
Summer Temple.
Here.
And Rebecca Turrentine.
Here.
Okay,
are
a
here.
full house, and we have quorum. We do have a new member, Summer Temple, with us today, and Marlene will introduce her in just a moment, but Summer wanted to say welcome. We are so happy to have you on the Citizens Oversight Committee, and Summer will be representing the local business community. So let us move on to public comments. Were any public comments received by the deadline?
There were no public comments.
Thank you. There is no old business listed. Does any committee member have old business? Seeing none, we'll move on. I'll turn it over to you, Marlene, to officially introduce Summer Temple as a new committee member.
Thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to introduce our newest member, Ms. Summer Temple. She does join us as our representative of the business community here for the Long Beach Community College District. Summer comes to us with a long history of public service, having been an alum of Long Beach City College itself. The Board of Trustees appointed Summer as our newest member just a few meetings ago, and we are very excited to have her. And if I may, I'd like to invite her to introduce herself to the committee.
Hi guys, my name is Summer. As Vice President Drinkwine said, I am an alumni of LBCC. I'm also a member of the Board of Governors, and I sit on the executive committee. I'm very committed to Long Beach City College, and I'm thrilled to be serving in this new capacity for our local community college.
Very busy lady.
That's true. Well, thank you so much, Summer. I feel really privileged to get to work with you here and also for the LBCC Foundation, and appreciate you taking on this additional role in supporting the important work of the college. Let's move on to item 4.2, the approval of the minutes from August 17th. May I have a motion, please?
Move approval.
And when we do motions, could you say your name too? That just helps, Shonda.
Becky, move approval.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second?
Second, Joan Greenwood.
Seconded by Joan. Is there any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. We will move over to the performance and financial audits, and I'll turn it on over to the auditors.
Okay, so I believe we have a PowerPoint presentation as well. Thank you. So hello everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the results of the financial and the performance audits of Measure E and Measure LB. I'll start off with the results of the financial audit. So on pages 1 and 2, immediately following the table of contents, we have included our opinion on the financial statements. And this year, similar to our opinions in the past, we are issuing an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements presents fairly in all material respects the activities of Measure E and Measure LB funds, and the statements were prepared in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the US. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide under generally accepted auditing standards. Next slide, please. Thank you. Following our opinion on page 3, we have the balance sheet. On page 3, we have the balance sheet, the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in fund balance, which is essentially the income statement, is on page 4, and the notes to the financial statements are on page 5 through 10. There is a footnote on page 5 under the basis of accounting paragraph where management has disclosed that these fund financial statements were appropriately prepared using the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is different from the district's financial statements that were also appropriately prepared using the full accrual basis under the guidance prescribed by the Government Accounting Standards Board. Next slide, please. So now I'll go over the performance audit report section, which covers the rest of the report package that was issued. So our opinion on the internal control and compliance, which is on pages 11 through 12, we did not identify any instances of non-compliance or internal control issues, which is essentially summarized on page 13, where we have disclosed that there were no findings this year, similar to the prior year report. Next slide, please. So we are issuing an unmodified opinion, which means that the general obligation bond funds were expended in all significant respects on the specific project developed by the Board of Trustees and approved by the voters. Next slide. Our objectives as it pertains to the performance audit is to first identify the expenditures that were charged to the district's general obligation bond funds, Measure E, Measure LB. Once we've identified the expenditures, we determine whether those were appropriately charged in accordance with the bond project list approved by the voters. Next slide, please. As it relates to the non-salary transactions, so this year there were no expenditures charged to the Measure E funds. So all of our testing pertained to activities in the Measure LB funds. So for the testing of non-payroll related items, we tested on a sample basis 83 transactions totaling approximately $35.5 million, which was about 66% of the $53.5 million in total expenditures charged to the fund. So for the samples tested, we reviewed the actual invoices, purchase order, and even bid documents to determine if those charges were appropriate. Next slide, please. As it relates to the salaries and benefits charged to the fund, we analyzed the total expenditures of approximately $380,000 to verify if those charges were incurred only to the extent the employees performed work associated with Measure LB. So that was basically the summary of the results of our audit for fiscal year 2020. At this point in time, I can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from committee members?
I'm satisfied.
Can I just request something? Is it okay if I can actually get this presentation? If that's possible?
If I can pop in, Cesar, it is attached in the board docs. So starting just a couple of meetings ago, we now use board docs as the official agenda tool for the Citizens Oversight Committee meeting, very similar to the Board of Trustees. And if you need help, I can connect with you later and show you how to toggle between the different types of meetings, but all the documents we're discussing tonight are attached to the agenda under board docs. So you, as well as any member of the general public, can access them and download them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that information.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Well, then thank you, Saeed. We appreciate that presentation. And Marlene, as I recall, this is an information item for the COC as the Board of Trustees receives and approves these audits, right?
That is correct, but this is a really critical report for this committee. And thanks to John Thompson and his team, thanks to John Duong and the bond management team, particularly Lexi, who does a lot of the accounting, this is a clean audit. And that means not only have we recorded the financial data correctly, but that it reflects an accurate expenditure of the funds according to what the voters approved. And that is the purpose of this committee, to ensure that we continue to do so. So this allows us to look back over that year and say, yes, we've done our jobs well. We have spent the money in accordance with the bond measures.
Right. You can't ask for a cleaner audit than this, and no management letter, and especially the critical nature of the salary transactions and all of those being clean. We appreciate the work of the audit team and the bond management team and the district staff. Great. So let's move on to item 4.4, the approval of the 2020 annual report. This is part of the requirements of the measure as well, that we provide a variety of information on the usage of the bond funds and various disclosures to the community on that. So the 2020 annual report is included in the documents. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Eric. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Becky. Second, is there any discussion on the item?
I just like to say that the use of graphics and photos really brings the report alive. It's really easy to understand, and for members of the community to really see the quality of what's going on here. So well done for staff who put this together. Very nicely done.
Yeah.
Completely. I'm sorry, what was that?
I've used it similarly.
Yeah, absolutely. I especially love looking at the maps, because over the years, there are just fewer and fewer untouched facilities. And it's so exciting. In fact, I mean, at PCC, you struggle almost to find any left. So really, really exciting as we move forward on that master plan. Is there any other discussion? Okay, then all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the 2020 annual report is approved. We'll move to item 4.5, the quarterly expenditure reports. And John, will you take us through those?
I think I'm going to be presenting those for you, Aaron.
Great. Okay, to you, Marlene.
Before I do, I really want to credit Shonda Jones for the work she did in pulling that information together and constructing the annual report. So she deserves a lot of credit for pulling that. And of course, it was a team effort, but
Definite
Shonda
team effort. Thank you. Yeah.
Your division oversees so much, Marlene, and I know Shonda is a hub of so much information. And I know she puts in late nights because I get emails from her. Things are posted. So I echo your sentiments.
Thank you.
All right, Dario, can we bring up the first of the two reports? Yes, the ending to September. Correct. Thank you. And for this report, I do want to give everybody credit when credit's due. Lexi helps construct these reports. She really is the accountant serving the bond management team. And the purpose of the quarterly reports is to share with you the expenditures to date in each of our bond funds, so that you can always get an updated reporting of the expenditures. And they consist of an initial title page with the summary, and then following that, you can see the details of all the expenditures. And so while we have two for you, this first ending September 2020, and as we scroll to page 3, I think, Dario, you can see here the specific programs, so the specific projects themselves, and the expenditures in the budget for that time period, which is really important. But if I may, I'd like to talk specifically about the report ending December 2020. So that's the most recent one, but you do receive all quarterly reports. So looking at the summary, you see that first, I'm sorry, Daria, let's stick with page 1. The auditors mentioned how we had no expenditures in Measure E for the year they were reviewing, which was the 2019-20 year. That continues into the 2020-21 year. That we are what I call letting E rest. That means that we have spent all the cash from the bonds we have already issued, but the voters have issued an amount greater than what we've issued, but we don't want to issue them right now because it would negatively impact the tax rates. So we have spent the cash that we've issued so far from E, and now we're letting it rest. And instead, we have Measure LB that we are currently issuing from. So you will continue to see $0 expended from Measure E. This does not mean Measure E is done. This just means Measure E still has capacity to issue, and we will issue in a future year when we can still uphold the promise to the taxpayers of that maximum tax rate. So scrolling to page 2. And this is the activity you see in Measure LB. So we are really issuing from Measure LB and funding our projects cash-wise from Measure LB. And when you see the quarter ending in September, you can see that the expenditures to date were 130 million. By December, it's 147 million. And that's from the total LB amount. The expenditures for those quarters were 13 million and then growing to 17 million. You can expect to see those dollars increasing. We have a lot of project completions, and so we'll have a lot of payouts. So when we look at the same quarterly reports, when we meet in another 6 months, those amounts will grow. We've done a tremendous amount of work.
Are you interested in this at all? No, you're not. No, it doesn't interest you in the least bit. I didn't think so.
Joan, can you mute your microphone? Thank you.
And so again, as we scroll to page 3, you'll be able to see the detail for all those expenditures. That going from left to right, you'll see what the project name is, what the original budget is. You'll see a tremendous amount of adjustments. These are budget adjustments as we have to adjust from different areas for the projects. And then what's left and what's available in those areas.
And Marlene, on that point, just, in case any of the members see those items, like I think it was the September 30th report, there's one of them that had a rather large negative available budget, but that resolves in the December report. Those are just timing issues of point in time as funds are being moved around. Is that correct?
That is correct. That if we have a budget overage, it will show a negative, and then we look for the appropriate project to transfer the funds from. So typically there are a couple of different ways we do that. We do have a contingency fund for budget overruns. We try not to use that and only use that as the last option. Instead, if we have a project that we've realized, for instance, with a renovation, that a large portion of the renovation is a fire alarm system, we have a separate project budget for things like fire alarm systems. Or if a large portion of a project impacts landscaping to the extent that it's not just right there by the building, but it's really a larger landscaping project, we have a budget for landscaping projects. So many times we just take a look at this project and say, okay, how can we reconstruct it? But we have had 2 projects that have been significantly over budget, including the kinesiology lab and aquatic center. And it does happen, it's unfortunate. Our budgets do anticipate increases in each year through 2041, but it does happen. When it does happen, we explain it very carefully and completely to the Board of Trustees because they do have to approve those budget transfers. And as you said, Aaron, it is a timing issue because to make that budget transfer, it's not just something we can do. We identify where we want to make it from, but we do have to present it to the Board of Trustees and have their approval.
So is that what happens with change orders also? Additive change orders?
Correct. Additive change orders are always presented to the Board of Trustees. They do not always need a budget transfer, however. So an additive change order means that we are needing to increase the contract amount, but a budget for a project includes a lot of different contracts, and we normally have a little bit of a cushion in there. So change order doesn't necessarily equate immediately to a budget adjustment, but it may, depending on the size of the change order and how many change orders have been present for the entire project.
One of the reasons that consent agenda for the Board of Trustees is so massive.
Correct. But in response to one of the trustees' requests, we are providing more information on the agenda summary language so that the public doesn't have to open up the attachment to see the information, that you get a much more detailed summary now of those change orders than you would before. And I have to share at the last board meeting, since consent, as you know, doesn't get an opportunity to talk about each of the items and may have missed the public's attention. We have 3 negative change orders. This never happens. That means we had 3 projects that closed below the budget, including the PCC parking structure of almost $400,000. So,
oh,
yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations to the bond management team. The project went smooth. Under budget normally means under time, that they really got in there and built that beautiful structure quickly.
Yeah. Sharon, did you have a comment?
I had a question and I wasn't sure if it now or if we should wait till she finishes the report, but I was going to ask, as a result of there not being students on campus and with everything that's happening with COVID, have we actually garnered some savings in our construction time because we've been able to speed up some of the projects and not have students on campus? Or, and it doesn't have to be now, but maybe just talk a little bit in general about how the campus and the construction has been impacted.
Thank you. That is indeed one of the reasons we're coming under budget, because we have far fewer students on campus. We are able to do things a little bit more quickly. However, I want to say we still have a very active campus despite it being a closed campus. And that might sound like an oxymoron that we have an active closed campus. But some of those activities we have include essential personnel performing essential functions that can't be performed remotely. So think payroll team has to come in a couple of times a month to issue paychecks for folks who don't have direct deposit. Or we have a server room. So we have to have our IT network specialists monitor and babysit the server room. We have a warehouse that's very busy. We receive things all the time. We have a mail room. Groundskeepers and custodians must be on campus to do their jobs. We have a lot of drive-through events. So think for our fashion classes at the beginning of the semester, we actually loan out sewing machines. Those have to be distributed, right? Same thing with Wi-Fi hotspots and Chromebooks. And we have food for some of our basic needs insecure students. We will have drive-through food events. And then on top of that, we have what we call our essential labs. The public safety orders allow us to continue to train students in those essential functions, such as construction. So we have about 2,500 students on campus taking those essential labs in the regular term. And so that means the faculty associated with it. It means folks staffing screening health tables, taking temperatures, all of that. And then in addition to that, we are very, very honored to partner with the city of Long Beach with their rapid assessment clinics at both campuses. And then we also have our child development centers, which are open and serving some students so that their parents who are essential workers can work. So it's a lot of juggling. it's a lot of making sure that if we're needing to close an area for construction, that's not an area that's going to impact those super critical functions, since we are really down to only doing critical functions. So it's still very much a balancing act, but yet even with all that, we are less active than we would have normally been. And so it does mean less interruptions to some of these construction projects.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else on the quarterly reports you wanted to draw to our attention, Marlene?
No, I think you have the information, and you are right that the next time you see this report, you'll see different amounts in the budget as we continue to adjust for ongoing projects. And if any of you have questions later, if something occurs to you, I am always available to answer them at your convenience.
Great, thank you, Marlene. Are there any other questions for Marlene before we move toward approval? Okay, then may I have a motion, please?
So moved, Joan Greenwood.
Thank you, Joan.
By
Is there a
the
second?
President.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Cesar?
Oh, I said second by the Associate Student Body President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the quarterly reports for September 30th and December 31st are approved, and we'll move on to my personal favorite part, the construction update, getting to see all of the great things that the students can look forward to when the vast majority return to campus. So Walter, I will turn that over to you.
All right, good evening, everybody, and we'll get started here. Next page. We have several projects that have been recently completed. The electric vehicle charging station, which houses 65 EV charging stations at LAC parking structure and 25 EV charging stations at PCC Lot 10. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Another project is the Facility Advisory Committee approved the district-wide calf sense irrigations upgrade. And that work was completed in December this past year. Next slide, please. The LAC building S stadium restroom renovation. That work is planned to start this summer. Next slide, please. LAC building D, fume hood repairs. That's to repair some of the fume hoods at building D and to address the HVAC and other areas at building D as well. Next slide, please. LAC building Q pool liner. That's our existing pool, and we will be repairing the pool liner in that. And right now, the health department is reviewing those documents. Next slide, please. We have several projects in the closeout phase. That's LAC building J, and that to provide additional classroom, office storage, and an elevator. We had a virtual ribbon cutting held in December. Next slide, please. The LAC building X central plant expansion. This is to expand the capacity of the existing central plant to accommodate upcoming growth shown in the 2041 facility master plan. Substantial completion was awarded last month, and they are currently working on the punch list. Next slide, please. PCC parking structure. The parking structure will provide 500 to 600 vehicles for long-term student and staff parking. There are solar panels on the top level, and we held a virtual ribbon cutting in December. Next slide, please. Next slide is the LAC Kinesiology Lab and Aquatic Center, which we call CLAC for short. The outdoor kinesiology lab consists of softball fields, soccer fields, sand volleyball courts, tennis courts, and associated support facilities and infrastructure, and also will house a 50-meter pool and support buildings. Next slide, please. LAC building M, multidisciplinary classroom. This project replaces building M and N, and it houses language art, foreign language, and computer office studies. Next slide, please. Our next slide is a district-wide building management system, BMS. We recently switched our controls over to Train, and the BMS will provide data collection to measure building consumption of energy, power, water, and gas usage, which is critical to our IEMP, which is the Integrated Energy Master Plan. Next slide, please. The next slide is PCC building MM construction trades 1. If you've been at PC camp, if you've driven through PCC campus, you will see this project is under construction. This project will house HVAC in the carpentry department. Next slide, please. Projects in design. Projects currently in design is the LAC ADA accessibility. These documents prepared in response to our CAS survey. Next slide, please. LAC building GNH. This is a replacement of building GNH with a 57,680 gross foot square building that will house the music, dance, radio, TV, and theater, labs, office, performance, and rehearsal space. Next slide, please. The next slide consists of PCC building MM construction trades 2. This will be the second phase of the construction trades 1, which I discussed earlier. And we anticipate to start construction on this in spring of 2023. It's currently in design. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the district-wide IEMP solar panel project, which is Integrated Energy Master Plan. The solar panel carports canopies are to be installed at the PCC in parking lot 1 and 2, and at LAC in parking lot M around the stadium. Next slide, please. Next slide is project and design is LAC building E College Center. This will house our food service kitchen. It will house also dining, student life, and international student space and student club. Next slide, please. And this is actually a campus map of LAC campus. As you can see, it's coded in different shades. Construction completed, under construction, and design. So as Aaron stated earlier, we're starting to touch a lot of buildings on both campuses. And if you look at that map, that's evidence of that. Next slide, please. The next slide is the Pacific Coast Campus, the site plan, which was delineate the same thing. You have the goal for construction completed and under construction and in design. So you can see it's a very colorful map. Next slide, please. Upcoming projects. LAC Building S, Vet Stadium. Pre-design work is anticipated to start this spring. We will be doing a feasibility study. And design work is anticipated to start summer of 22, with construction of a stadium work anticipated to start spring of 2025. Next slide, please. Another upcoming project is district-wide access control. We currently use the Omni system, and the Omni system is no longer being supported. It's actually being discontinued. So we're actually conducting a feasibility study to find out what next system that we would use. And this new system will utilize employee badges. It's a widely used system and will be easy to administer. Next slide, please. And now I get to the Q&A. Any questions?
Eric?
I'm curious when my old home, building B, is going to be looked at. That was my home for 40 some odd years.
I can't recall when building B is scheduled to start. I will say this, that we have had to juggle the planned schedule quite a bit. And the reason for that is two reasons. One, we got approved for state funding for a couple of buildings. And once we get that state funding, we have to spend it in 3 years. So those buildings automatically move up in the schedule, which means other things move back. And then two, if we have a building that has issues that we didn't anticipate, or if we have a programmatic need, we might move a building up. We don't do it lightly, but anytime we move something up, something else gets moved back. And we've had to move things forward, such as building state funding, gotta spend it. Or building the new music theater arts. We're getting state funding. Love getting the millions of dollars, but we've got to, once we get the cash, we only have 3 years to spend it.
Okay, understand.
Marlene,
I'll be patient.
Kind of tied into that, can you talk about how the stadium plans have changed? I know originally it was a little bit later in the master plan, and you had some life safety issues, and also we're spending some money doing renovations now, like the restrooms and such. Can you touch on that?
Absolutely. The 2041 master plan put the vet stadium several years into the future. However, we recently, and you may recall from previous presentations, had to do significant repair work to some of the exterior concrete areas because we had an issue where the concrete swelling was falling. And we certainly don't want that situation to be. That's a very dangerous situation. So we had some engineering reports done, and the results were this. We could either do a less expensive repair that would last us probably 5-10 years and still be safe. Or we can do the multi-million-dollar repair that would last forever. If we invested multi-millions of dollars for this repair, then that would limit our ability to do something different in the future for the stadium. It would almost make the decision that we'd have to renovate or not replace, or that we'd have to stick with something. It's like, knowing that you'd have to replace a carpet, but still choosing to change the flooring today, even though you know you're gonna have to do it tomorrow. So we made the decision to go with the less expensive repair that is still a safe repair. I wanna stress that. That building is still very safe. But because of that, we know that we do need to address it more on a long-term basis. And that's really moved the stadium up. And so what we're doing right now is that feasibility study that Walter mentioned is really telling us if we did a renovation, this is the cost. These are the issues that would arise. If we did a full replacement, this is the cost. Because as you know, every time you do a renovation, there tends to be some hidden items that appear. And if we do a full building replacement, we have more flexibility to what that building looks like. But it's important for us to know what those costs are for either option. And then knowing the incredible public interest in Vet Stadium, whether you're an adjacent neighbor and you're impacted directly by the activities, or whether you're just a resident in our community, Vet Stadium is used for so many things, from commencement exercises for Long Beach Unified to the antique swap meet to now the City of Long Beach's COVID-related things, but they always do their flu clinics there, that we really want to engage the public in a deeper way than we typically do to get their input. So we anticipate this is going to have a much longer planning period than typical. But as Walter said, we are planning for construction to start around 5 years from now, but we're leading up to that.
Well, that stadium is about 80 years old, so it's not surprising.
And that stadium also had some seismic retrofitting in the 80s, which is not how they do seismic retrofitting today. So we have to look at that structurally and say, can we effectively pull that up to today's standards, or can we not? That's part of what the feasibility study is.
I can tell you what I'd like to see. Knock it down and start up from new.
Yes, yes. We have our budget. I think Walter's presentation showed it was a little bit south of $90 million. It's not a lot of money for a stadium. So we'll see what we can do. Really anxiously awaiting what that feasibility study looks like. And I should share that Walter also talked about the solar panel project. We are moving forward with the PCC, but we decided to wrap that solar panel project with the stadium along with that project, because we certainly don't want to erect solar panels and then have to remove them because we decided to do something different. So we're addressing that whole stadium project along with the solar panels so that, again, we don't have a sunk cost that we can't recover or that we have to replace.
And also you have the shade from the Douglas buildings that will affect the solar panels on the west side.
Right. Actually, it's interesting that in the diagram in the presentation that Walter showed, there is some shading showing where the solar panels would be placed, because the engineers did look at that. And they looked at where in that parking lot is the best place to capture the sunlight. And so that's part of the consideration when we look at the whole stadium project. We're not talking about a small impact with the solar panels. It has the potential to save the district about $1 million a year in energy costs.
And hugely important to reaching your net zero goal.
Absolutely. We actually could not reach our net zero energy goals if we did not erect solar panels somewhere around that parking lot.
What other questions do members have for Walter or Marlene? One more I just wanted to touch on. I know with the kinesiology labs and aquatic center, obviously a beautiful new pool going in there. Walter, you mentioned the relining of the existing pool. Can you remind, the existing pool is staying as well? So this is a long-term investment in that facility?
It is. And interestingly, you know, I've been with the district 3 years now, but as they looked at that project, there was more cost involved with filling the pool than with maintaining the pool. It's a very interesting dynamic. And there's a lot of interest in different uses for both pools. And so as we move forward and as we get nearer to the opening, we're going to be looking at how we can still do our community programs where we allow community use of the pools. How does that look with the new pool? Really trying to make sure that we have full use of both pools, but we expect them to both be very busy.
I'd like to mention too, for, I think, just kind of putting these number of projects in perspective. And I know, Walter, you've spent your career around the country working in facilities and construction, and Marlene, you've overseen those at a number of campuses. This is not a normal amount of projects to be simultaneously in construction, in planning. I mean, this is, you know, I think one of the reasons I know that for me, and maybe some of you are interested in this committee, is because I'm hugely proud that the taxpayers of Long Beach committed almost $1.3 billion to Long Beach City College. You know, you can look at, there was an education construction bond on the ballot last year statewide that failed. And the fact that our community is supporting, we're essentially building a campus that rivals, you know, a private college, and actually better, because ours is going to be essentially brand new, or, you know, completely renovated, and hardly anywhere has that. So just kudos, Walter, to you and your team, and Marlene. This is, unless you're aware of another city college in the state out of what, 117 that has this sort of activity. It's incredible. It's something to be proud of.
And if I may, I really want to thank Cordoba as well. John and his team are phenomenal. We are so happy with our partnership with Cordoba. We just renewed our partnership with them for another 5 years, that we really have a seamless bond management process. And Walter's leadership of the entire facilities division has really allowed us to have great success.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, John and Cordoba. Oh, Sharon?
Well, I was gonna say, I had one comment too. I did get to participate in the virtual PCC parking lot, which was very impressive. And I drive PCH almost daily. And I know parking lots usually aren't pretty, but I'll have to say it actually has improved that stretch of Pacific Coast Highway. I mean, the banners, the colors, all of that.
Well, thank you. It's a lot of planning went into it, and that's testament to, like Marlene stated, Marlene herself for the leadership. John and his team, the facilities team, we put a lot of hours into, because we have two distinctive campuses. We had a Spanish campus here, but we have an Art Deco campus over at PCC. So we've spent a lot of time to make sure that when that doing the design and when that project was finished, it blended into the existing campus, but also enhanced it as well. And you see a lot of that with the landscape and some of the site work that you see around campus. So thank you.
And I can't wait, Sharon, to invite you on campus, because when you look at that parking structure from the center quad area, we've actually extended a pedestrian path. I get so excited about this stuff, but the signage looks amazing from the interior of the campus as well.
And that used to be a junior high school.
It's really starting to look like a college campus now, and
yeah.
I'm very proud of it.
And environment matters for learning. And the visibility of future Vikings. We know that PCC has always had a bit of a visibility problem in terms of branding, and LB, for LBCC. And I'm just excited how many students will go by that over the course of their education leading up to them becoming students.
Jack just had a future Viking in the picture.
Oh, I didn't notice. I was looking down. I missed it. I'll go back to the instant replay. Are there any other comments or questions for Marlene or Walter? Okay, then that's an information item. We can move on. Marlene, are there other updates to share?
I do not have any specific updates, other than I want to share with you that the staff and I are reviewing our current outstanding bonds that have already been issued, to see if in the current market, if we could achieve savings if we did a bond refunding. You might think of it as a bond refinancing. And the purpose of that would be solely to save the taxpayer money. That if we were able to reissue these bonds that we have already issued at a lower interest rate, then we would be reducing the community's debt. So we are engaging in a study right now to look at that.
Marlene, based on what I see at the credit union investments going down to maybe 1% if you're lucky. I'm talking about markets that are out there. And so we're not able to do anything worthwhile in investments. So I would say it's a good bet that we can do it better with cheaper.
Absolutely. And municipal bonds have their own specific market, and they're really interesting, but there's always a demand for them. So we are going through that process. We'll be presenting the results of that study to the Board of Trustees in an upcoming board meeting. And if we decide to move forward, we'll be asking them for their approval, but hopefully we'll have good news to share that we were able to save, a few $1 million.
Could you let us know when you do when you do share it with the board?
Absolutely. I'll make sure that to give that information to Shauna, and she'll email it to you, all the information that we receive and when the presentation to the board will occur.
Good, thank you.
Marlene, to jump in, this is John Thompson. We have the resolution to approve going to the February board meeting, end of February.
There you go.
The bond refunding resolution.
And it's
And I
February
should note,
already.
it's just one more thing we're trying to do, right? I mean, we are really juggling a lot of items, but it is important that we have an opportunity here to save some taxpayer dollars that we move forward. We won't know exactly how much we save until we go to the market. You know, we're talking about several $1 million of bonds that we would be refunding. So it's not until we go to the general market that we know what interest rates we get. And a lot of that depends on who else is in the market the same day. But hopefully we can achieve a level of savings that is significant.
And that's the February 24th. And that's for the board to approve moving forward. And like Marlene mentioned, you see what the market is at the proposed issuance date. And if it is favorable, then we issue refunding bonds. If not, then they're not issued.
Get your sleep the night before if you're going to watch the board meeting, though. They've been marathon.
They are not as short as these meetings are. I think they're fascinating, though.
Lots of info.
Depending on what you call fascinating.
And I do want to echo, I really appreciate, Marlene, your team and the communications team in doing the virtual ribbon cuttings. It would be really easy to not mark those celebrations of the facility openings and reopenings, but they were catchy, they were fast, they were, I think, helped campus and community pride. And got to give kudos to you. You were in full like game show host mode. It was fun. It was fun to watch. So thank you guys for doing those to show off to the community.
And thank you to Stacy Toda, who's here on the meeting tonight as well. She and the rest of the communications team led by Joshua Castellanos have been phenomenal.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. Okay, so there are currently no scheduled upcoming events. We'll keep apprised, and Shonda will let us know if anything comes up between now and our next meeting. Our future agenda items are our pro forma quarterly expenditure reports, construction updates. Occasionally, we do have requests from this body for special presentations, but I have not heard any from anyone. Is there anyone have a special request for a presentation? Okay, then our next meeting date, August 16th, 2021. And I hope that by that time, we will all have received both of our shots. Maybe we'll be in person.
You're an optimist.
I'm just throwing something. It's Monday, but I'm not holding my breath on that, but hopefully we'll all be safe between now and then. So with no further, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:54, bonus 6 minutes, everybody back. If you have a favorite TV show that starts at 7, you can watch it. All right, thank you everyone, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
Good night.
I just want to let everyone know, thank you for letting me be in the